Hi everyone. A couple of weeks ago I did a children's book. I did a reading from Madeline. I don't have a children's book today. I have Sri Lanka, which I wrote and is available as of today. Online at the moment because the bookstores aren't open. You can order it through Powell's or Amazon. You can order it through Barnes & Noble. Oddly enough, from Target you can order it. And if you do, I hope you'll find it quite interesting. It's inspired by the 2 years I spent in Sri Lanka as the public affairs officer for the American embassy there. And it's a story of romance and intrigue, betrayal and loss. Sounds pretty serious, doesn't it? And a chance at redemption by people who badly need it. So I'm going to read some selections from the first chapter. Sri Lanka by Stephen Holgate. No one writes songs about Paris in the winter. There's little romance in the chill and the rain, and it's hard to find poetry in gray. When night falls, the upper floors of the city's dark buildings dissolve into the leaden sky, leaving only the yellow glow of lighted rooms. I turn up the collar of my raincoat and jam my fists deep into my pockets. The walk from my place in the Place du Panthéon to Frank Schaeffer's apartment near the École Militaire varies with the season. December's rain and gusting winds have robbed the city of autumn's agreeable melancholy. And the normally pleasant stroll along the boulevard becomes a head-down trudge between the lighted cafe windows and the bare rain-dripping trees. I could have taken the metro, but after riding it into the embassy that morning, and back again that night, I breathed enough dead air for one day. A gust of wind blows me toward the steps of the upscale apartment house where Frank Schaeffer lives. I press the buzzer, and the door clicks open. Drink in hand, Schaeffer comes to the door and smiles. "Philip Reed, hey, buddy." He has this patronizing way of calling me buddy that irritates an ancient nerve. I'm certain he sees it, though he can't know why. And I'm equally sure that that's why he does it. Frank looks around, frowning. Where the hell's the boy I hired to answer the door? I throw my raincoat over a chair and Frank leads me into the living room, an overbright salon with a row of windows giving on the Seine. The dinner guests include a couple of think tank mavens, a woman from the British Embassy, and the usual mix of politicos and foreign ministry types, a dozen altogether. As always, the French appear elegant and burned out, and have the sort of impeccable manners that I once imagined movie stars had until I met a couple of them. The Englishwoman is earnest and dowdy, wearing a dress that looks as if it's done time as a sofa covering. Before I can manage to shake hands around the room, a voice calls us to dinner. The boy, Frank mentioned, he's hired for the night, is a South Asian. He stands straight as a soldier in the archway leading to the dining room, a touch of gray at his temples, dressed in a waiter's shapeless white coat and a pair of black slacks that no longer hold a crease. "À table," he says. Dinner is served. He tells us this in a voice oddly expressionless, as if some essential part of him no longer lives in his body. Schaeffer looks at me and laughs. "What's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost." I lean against a chair and manage to wave him off. "No, I'm just... I didn't have any lunch today, and I'm suddenly..." Frank smiles and nods reassuringly at a couple of guests who are looking at me. "I'm fine," I tell him, and look again at the figure in the doorway. Time can devastate a man, yet leave the features and form of his youth recognizable under the debris. I knew him instantly. For a short time, no more than a few months, he had been like a brother to me. But that was a lifetime ago and on the other side of the world, a time and place I have struggled and failed to lose from memory. Bandara. Like the evocation of a neglected jinn, the name calls up memories of tropical heat and the heavy, oppressive air of Sri Lanka. It recalls the memory of a woman I loved and an unbearable remorse that for years threatened my sanity. On countless nights, when sleep will not come and the past rises up from where I buried it in the shallow grave of memory, I think of Sri Lanka, of what happened to me and to those I cared for, and how I learned the toll that secrets could demand. Not once, as I recall those times, did I ever think that I would see Bandela again. While the other guests filed into the dining room to find their places around the table, I waver between the impulse to run back out in the street and an urge to reach out and touch him, if only to attest the reality of what my eyes tell me. Bandela stares unmoving into the empty living room. He does not so much as glance at me. Frank places me between the Englishwoman and a mid-level officer from the Foreign Ministry. I pretend to listen as the Frenchman talks of his government's policy towards some region I don't quite catch. But I never take my eyes off the figure who circles the table, mutely offering carrots and beef and potatoes to the guests, his waiter's garb rendering him invisible to the others. I sense he has become invisible to himself. His expression dead, he says nothing, makes eye contact with no one. Every pass around the table must tear at him like a turn on the rack. He who, with a raised eyebrow or the flick of a hand, once commanded servants, field workers, and machine gun-toting guards on his family's estate among the coconut groves outside of Colombo. Irrationally, I wait for the moment when he will, like the pitiful wretch in a folk tale, throw off these beggars' weeds and reveal himself as the prince passing in disguise. But no. His kingdom has been long ago lost beyond recall, and I played my role in its overthrow. The dinner seems to last forever. I sit like a rock, letting the stream of conversation flow around me. At one point, I hear the English diplomat say, "But you only live once." To which I reply, most people can't even manage that. An observation that comes off as so cynical that even the Frenchman blinks. After an endless couple of hours, dessert comes, followed by coffee. At last, the guests begin to move toward the door, retrieving their coats from Bandela as he brings them out from a back bedroom. Everyone makes their goodbyes to Frank, waving over their shoulders, telling him what a fine evening it has been. Frank wanders off to pay the cook, not noticing that one guest has not yet left, me. Bandela stands in the entryway, my raincoat over his arm, his eyes fixed on the uninhabited distance. Bandela. I speak the word quietly, as if invoking a charm that might waken him from a spell. It's me. After a timeless wait, he makes the barest nod. I know who you are. His voice is flat as death. I grope for something to say, but can find only, "It's good to see you," the lie biting deep into our mutual dread. For an instant, the thought of Bandela's family flickers across my mind. Somehow he senses it, as clearly as if I have written it on the air before us. The stone-like face slowly turns towards me, and for a moment the mask drops. His chin tilts up, and his eyes regain the arrogance he once carried as his birthright. All of those people can go to hell. Unable to escape the memory of my own share of the guilt in Bandela's break with his family, my role in the tragedy that he and I share, a tragedy that drove Bandela into lifelong exile, even as it propelled me to professional success. His words pierce my heart like a shiv. Before either of us can say more, Frank comes back into the room and frowns at me. "You still here?" He senses the tension between his boy and me, and a puzzled squint crosses his face as he looks first at me and then at Bandela. Yet the possibility that some tie might exist between me, an American diplomat, and this servant hired by the night lies beyond his imagination. Frank gives me a clap on the back that propels me towards the door. "Good to see you, buddy." He looks to Bandela to open the door for me and blows out a little puff of exasperation when he is forced to do it himself. "Thanks for coming," he mutters. Despite the weight of Frank's hand pushing me toward the elevator, I stand in the doorway a moment and try once more to catch Bandela's eye. Frank's puzzlement turns to irritation. It doesn't matter. The moment has passed. Bandela has once again turned into a statue beyond my reach. Out on the street, the rain has stopped and the wind picked up, swirling through the tops of the trees like an unbottled genie. Where do these winds start? I ask myself. How far have they traveled to buffet me as I go down the steps? I imagine them forming in tropical waters from where they are drawn northward, sighing over faraway deserts and great forests, curling up into cold, ancient Europe, where, after losing their life-giving warmth, they turn once more toward their distant source. For a moment I picture these winds picking me up, whirling me into the air, carrying me back once again to the sun and heat of the Indian Ocean, back to Sri Lanka, where I was a younger and better man, back to a time of war, long before I learned that every secret becomes an act of betrayal. So there it is, much of the first chapter. I hope this might urge you to take a further look at it. As I say, it is available today, April 28th, online until bookstores reopen, and then you can find it at a bookstore or order it through a bookstore. And I thank you for your patience. Hope everybody's staying well and staying safe. And maybe one of these days I'll be able to read part of this in person to some of you. Anyway, all the best. Take care.